Uncle Trev and Got a Henry's Horse by Jack Lasenby. Don't know how old Got a Henry would run his farm if he didn't have neighbours to borrow things from, Uncle Trev said one day as he sat beside my bed. I always know where my gear is, 'cause it's all down at Gotta's place. The only trouble is, when I want it, he can't remember where he's left it. His horse needed shoeing the other day, and old Gotta rode him over. "Gotta set these shoes on fit my horse, Trev?" he asked me. Well, I had a hunt around and found a set of shoes that looked about the right size, and he said, "Got a few horse nails?" I knew he wouldn't have any tools either, so I said, "Why don't you shoe him here?" Old Gotta nodded, and he picked up one of his horse's feet to rasp it and clean it, but he lifted it the wrong way, so the cunning brute leaned over and put his weight on him. "Don't move, Gotta," I told him. "He's put his weight on you." "Do you think I don't know that?" old Gotta puffed. "Do something quick." "It's the way you picked up his foot," I told him. "He had to lean on you or fall over." "He'll fall on top of me if I let go," old Gotta groaned. "Don't move," I shouted at him. I'd take some of his weight myself, but there's no sense in me getting myself pinned under him too. Uncle Trev looked at me. "Well, there wouldn't, would there?" he asked me. "No, I suppose not," I said. "Course not," said Uncle Trev. Well, I told Gotta to hold his breath while I rushed off to the harness shed for a couple of double pulleys and a length of rope to rig up a handy billy. I hung it off a macrocarpa branch above them with a length of chain and ran a rope through so there was enough purchase to lift a few dozen horses. All this time, old Gotta's getting red-faced with holding his breath, not daring to move, his eyeballs sticking out. "You'll be right," I keep telling him. "Just don't move or that horse'll fall on top of you." I pass a spare girth under the horse's brisket and take it up on the handy billy. There's 1,000 uses on a farm for a bit of gear like this, I tell Gotta. "Get on with it," he grunts at me. The tips of his ears are red, and there's a drip hanging off the end of his nose, so I wiped it for him. He didn't seem grateful, though. "Did the handy billy work?" I asked Uncle Trev. "Like a charm," he said. I just pulled away quietly. The rope ran through all the pulleys, the horse lifted off his front feet, and old Gotta scrambled out, straightening his back and telling the horse what he thought of him. "Get that shoe on him while I've still got him in the air," I said, and old Gotta fitted the shoe, hammered in the nails, and nipped them down before I lowered the horse. I was putting the handy billy away in the shed and heard a yell. When I wandered back to see what was happening, found old Gotta had gone round and lifted the horse's foot on the other side, and he'd lifted it the wrong way again. Horse had to lean over. You couldn't really blame him, and Gotta was trapped under his weight on that side now. "Did you rig your handy billy again?" I asked. "No use," said Uncle Trev. "The rope had broken, just as I let the horse down. Old Gotta had borrowed every other bit of rope in the place, and I knew I'd never find a single length of it, not even if I went over and looked at his whole farm. Besides, as I told old Gotta, if he was silly enough to go and get himself caught a second time, well, he could just get himself out of trouble. I was going to have a cup of tea," I said to him. Old Gotta called me every name under the sun, but I took my time. I had my tea, and poured one down his throat too when he opened his mouth to shout at me. "Well, how did he get out?" I asked. "He didn't," said Uncle Trev. "As far as I know, he's still there with his horse leaning on him. Left him to it. Came back to Waharoa to pick up a new length of rope so I can rig up my handy billy again." "But you've been up at Matamata all day, at the sale yards." "Won't do old Gotta any harm to stand there a while," said Uncle Trev. "He won't let himself get caught so easily next time he shoes a horse. Ground's a bit soft where he's standing. As I drove over the bridge and looked back at it this morning, horse's weight was driving its feet into the ground. Stopped and had another look and saw old Gotta was down at the top of his gumboots, but he yelled at me to hurry, so I drove on." "Will he be all right?" "Course he'll be all right," said Uncle Trev. He drove off, and I could see a new coil of rope on the back of his truck. The next time he came in, I asked Uncle Trev how he had got on with Mr. Henry's horse. "Oh, no trouble," said Uncle Trev. "Didn't even have to rig up the handy billy with the new rope. The horse had just put his foot down and walked away. So old Gotta told me, not long after I'd driven into town." "Well, that's all right then," I said. "I was worried." "Suppose you could say it was all right," said Uncle Trev. "What do you mean?" "Well, old Gotta had been driven so far into the ground by the weight of his horse The brute actually put his foot down, fell, and rolled away from Gotta, fortunately. Got up on his feet and walked away. Yeah, I said. So it was all right? Well, not actually, said Uncle Trev. You see, old Gotta, he's trapped down there, driven down to his waist in the soft ground. Suppose you dug him out, I said. I rigged up the handy-billy, said Uncle Trev, passed a strop under his chin, hauled away on the rope. But old Gotta waved his arms and asked if I was trying to break his neck, so I had to leave him there. What, stuck in the ground? I asked. Oh, I throw a horse cover over him at night, said Uncle Trev. You know, to keep off the dew. And if it looks like raining, stick an umbrella handle down the back of his shirt so he keeps quite dry, really. Give him a feed every time I cook for one myself, and I pour a mug of tea down his throat too. Had to lasso him and tie his hands down by his sides though, because he caught me a clip over the ear the first time I tried to feed him. He complains a bit of the flies crawling over his nose, but I'm not going to let his hands free and catch another clip over the ear. He's as happy as a sandboy, really. Gives me somebody to talk to, and the dogs enjoy having him over there. Why don't you just dig him out? I asked. Well, that's it, said Uncle Trev. Scared to let him go because of what he says he's going to do to me once he's free. But you can't just leave him there, I said. Oh, of course not, Uncle Trev agreed. Trouble is, old Gotta borrowed my last shovel years ago. Never returned it. Like all the other shovels and spades he's borrowed from me. Looked all over his farm and all his drains, but can't find a single one. What I thought it was, I'd leave a shovel beside him, let him dig himself out. I'd go and camp up in the bush behind my back paddock a few days. By the time I got back, he'd have cooled down. Just then, my mother called out and said there was a cup of tea on the table. Uncle Trev went out to the kitchen to have his. Mum brought me my medicine. I drank it and sucked away on a piece of orange she gave me to take the taste away. Can take home the rest of the date scones, I heard Mum tell Uncle Trev. Oh, thanks, he said. I was wondering if you had a shovel I could borrow. I just remembered I've got something that needs digging out, and old God Henry's borrowed mine. Don't know why you lend anything to that man, Mum said. He's always borrowing your things, and you know he never returns them. As he drove away with a shovel on the back of his truck, Mum said to me, wouldn't you think now that your uncle will keep a spare shovel or two on his farm? I suppose Mr. Henry must have borrowed them too, I said to her, as I listened for the sound of Uncle Trev's truck slowing down to go around the corner by the school.